Hi, I'm Magical, and in this video I am talking to you about shadow work. So, yeah, you've probably never heard of that. In my next video I will get back to doing funny skits again, but for today's video I wanted to talk to you about the other topics I often talk about on this channel, which is spirituality and the law of attraction. So, what is shadow work? Well, I'm going to answer that question of what is shadow work for you now. Shadow work is basically bringing to the light all of your demons, or the things that are kind of in the shadows about you, that all the traumas you've ever experienced. Shadow work is just a fancy term for working on yourself emotionally and spiritually. It's just a fancy term for emotional and spiritual maturing growth. Basically, according to Teal Swan, who is a spiritual teacher that I don't necessarily believe everything that Teal talks about, but I do believe in a lot of what she says, and Teal's paintings have really helped me a lot with getting better from my issues with depression and anxiety. So I do think that Teal knows what she's talking about here, and in this video I'm going to tell you how Teal Swan says to do shadow work. Well, this is just one example really of how to do shadow work. According to Teal Swan, there are apparently a lot of different techniques for doing shadow work, but this is the only technique that I know that I've learned from Teal Swan that I'm going to tell you about. So let me just go ahead and tell you. Well, first, before I tell you what the technique is, I should tell you why this is important for you to do. It is important to do shadow work because as a kid and all throughout our lives, we're all going to experience some kind of trauma. Something bad has happened to all of us. And every time something bad happened to us, either when we were a kid or when we were a teenager or even when we were an adult, every single time that something really bad happened to you, your consciousness basically split or fragmented, according to Teal Swan. And so it's like all these fractured parts of yourself cause you to experience triggers. You know how people who have mental health disorders, people who have mental disorders like me, we all have triggers. You know, something will happen or we'll see something that triggers us. And the reason for why we are triggered is because whatever triggered us is reminding us of the original trauma we experienced. It's reminding us of whatever bad thing that happened to us in our past that caused us to have this thing be a trigger for us in the first place. You know? There's always something you're reminded of whenever you're triggered by something. And you want to do shadow work because it will help basically undo a lot of the trauma that you experienced. I don't know if shadow work will undo all of the trauma you've experienced, and I don't know if shadow work will ever totally get rid of all of your triggers, but from my experience so far with using shadow work for only just a few days, it's really helped me a lot with getting over a lot of my emotional issues and a lot of my triggers. So I definitely think that shadow work is important to do. And basically when you do shadow work, all you're doing is becoming aware of whatever the original thing that you're basically just becoming aware of whatever the original bad thing that happened to you was that caused you to have the trigger in the first place when you do shadow work. So doing shadow work simply brings to light whatever it is that needed to be healed within you so that you can be a happier person in the future. And that's why it's important to do shadow work, because shadow work just makes you be a happier person, for starters. But then also shadow work puts back together a lot of those split parts of your consciousness that happen when you experience the trauma in the first place. So shadow work puts back together all of those split or fragmented aspects of yourself so basically doing shadow work actually makes you feel more whole on the inside. So if you are a person who has borderline personality disorder, for example, or if you have any kind of mental health issues, shadow work is really good for you to do because, like, I mentioned borderline personality disorder because I'm pretty sure people with borderline personality disorder often feel empty inside. And I personally have a theory that it's because they haven't really done any of their shadow work, and that's why they feel empty inside. But, well, that's just my theory anyway, for why they might feel empty inside. I don't really know why they feel empty inside, but I definitely experience my own feelings of emptiness, so I feel like I kind of, I feel like I get it, and, it's the emptiness is from not feeling whole. It's from not doing your shadow work yet, and therefore you haven't healed whatever caused you to feel the emptiness in the first place because you have not done your shadow work yet. But anyway, so shadow work just simply brings to the light all of your emotional issues that caused your triggers in the first place. And shadow work, I cannot guarantee that shadow work will 100% cure you of whatever mental health disorder you have, but I definitely think that shadow work really helps a lot, and I think it's a good thing to do, but it's not really for the faint of heart, but it has to be done. And I realized that I had an epiphany I just had this epiphany that I really had to do my shadow work. I had heard about the concept of shadow work for a while now, but I was afraid of doing it. I was afraid of doing my shadow work because I was worried that if I thought about all of the things that bother me, I was worried that I would have a nervous breakdown, basically. So But that didn't happen. I didn't have a nervous breakdown. Surprisingly, after experiencing all of the emotions I felt after actually really doing my shadow work and after doing some inner child work as well. I'll have to make another video on what inner child work is. But after doing all that stuff, I actually felt a lot better. I thought it would make me feel really depressed for a really long time, but the depression I felt was very short-lived. It only lasted for a few hours, like the actual, like really debilitating depression. It only lasted for a few hours. And then I felt really good when I woke up the next morning after doing my shadow work. So, but you see, the thing is, my life, like, nothing bad happened in my life. Nothing bad happened to me, but my paranoia that I experienced with my particular mental health issues was becoming so, and still is, so severe now that I felt like my life was like unbearable, basically. And I was starting to feel so much pain and just inner turmoil just from the unnecessary paranoia I feel when, like, nothing bad happened to me. You know, nothing bad actually happened in my life, but I'll just worry about everything. And I worry about other people constantly. And I'm always paranoid about everything. So that's my particular issue. And so my paranoia was becoming so unbearable that I was just like, I started thinking more and more about the concept of shadow work. It's kind of like, I feel like I was being guided to do my shadow work because it kept popping up in my mind. I kept thinking about it and how I was always scared to do it because I was worried that I would have a nervous breakdown or something if I actually just fully allowed myself to feel all of my emotions and think about all of the painful things that ever happened to me, which is what you have to do shadow work. It's really hard, and it's not for the faint of heart, but it's necessary because, see, these things kept happening to me. I felt like all of these bad things kept happening to me over and over again that were similar in theme, and I knew it was a law of attraction in play. You know, I knew it was me attracting all of that bad stuff to me because it was like the same bad things would happen to me over and over again, you know, like similar bad things. And it always made me feel guilty. But nothing bad actually happened to me. Like, nothing bad actually happened in my life. But I was feeling really guilty about everything. And, you know, and I was feeling really paranoid about everything. Unnecessarily. And I just realized that kind of stuff is going to keep happening to me. I'm going to keep attracting things and situations in my life that make me feel guilty until I actually face my emotions and feel my emotions and figure out the root cause of why I feel all of this guilt all the time and why I feel all this paranoia all the time. Because your life, if you feel like your life is unbearable, like how I've been feeling mine is lately, then I think it is because that is you being guided to do your shadow work. Because basically, I hate to tell you this, but things are not going to get better in your life for long until you do your shadow work. I realized that recently. I had that epiphany because I would basically have 2 or 3 months, or maybe even a month and a half or so, where I would be feeling pretty happy in my life. But then something would happen that would just make me feel really guilty or really paranoid, even though nothing bad actually happened. But I would feel guilty anyway. I would feel this unnecessary guilt about everything all the time. And then I'd have another few months where I'd be feeling happy, but then the same things would happen. You know, nothing bad would actually happen to me. Nothing bad would actually happen in my life, but I would feel guilt and paranoia. And I realized recently that that kind of stuff is just going to keep happening to me until I do my shadow work. My life is, I remember something that Teal Swan said in one of her videos. Teal Swan said that your life will become unbearable because you haven't done your shadow work, basically. You're just running away from all of your pain, and all these things that keep triggering you will keep happening, and all these triggers will keep triggering you over and over again until you finally face your emotions and do your shadow work and stuff. And I didn't think that Teal was right about that. I thought, oh, please, you don't know what you're talking about, Teal. That's bullshit. You know, I'm very skeptical with a lot of the things that spiritual teachers say, even with Abraham Hicks, who I love, you know. Like, I'm a really skeptical person in a lot of ways, but I'm also really open-minded. I'm just kind of like, you know, I'll believe it when I see it, you know, for myself. I have to kind of like test things out before I can really believe what someone says. Even though I believe in the law of attraction and stuff, I'm still skeptical, you know. I think I believed in the law of attraction because I experienced it for myself so many times. I realized it was real because I had personal proof of it. So basically, I realized that my life was becoming unbearable because I was running from all of my pain, and I needed to do my shadow work after all. And Teal was right. You do need to do shadow work. So if you feel like your life is unbearable, then it is a sign to do your shadow work. That is what I believe anyway. I believe that it is a sign to do your shadow work. You know, do not give up hope. Just do your shadow work. And now I'm going to tell you what shadow work is. It's really, like, this is just one technique that Teal talks about in her video. I think her video is called Diving Deep Shadow Work, something like that. That's where she talks about this particular technique for doing shadow work. Like I said, Teal says that there are a lot of different techniques for doing shadow work, but this is just one technique for doing shadow work. This is the only technique I know for doing shadow work, and I really need to look into other techniques for doing shadow work, and when I learn about those and actually see how they go for myself, I'll make a video about it if I feel like it actually helped me personally. But this, what I'm about to tell you now, actually did help me a lot with feeling better in my life and with getting over a lot of my paranoia. So I'm going to tell you what it is now. So according to Teal Swan, one technique for doing shadow work is, like, basically the first step. So this is step one. Step one is to just be with your emotions. So basically, you want to do this whenever, I mean, you can do this process, you can do shadow work whenever you have a trigger, whenever something triggers you, you can do shadow work. But I think that would be exhausting, and it might actually cause you to have a nervous breakdown because, first of all, I don't know if you would even have time to do shadow work every single time something triggers you. I mean, and then you would probably start crying in public, you know? But here's how I do the shadow. Here's how I did the shadow work. Here's how I think you should do shadow work. I think that at least once a week, but probably it would be better if you did this maybe 3 times a week. I think you should probably do shadow work 3 times a week. I don't know. I really don't even know how often you should do shadow work. But I'm just going to tell you that I personally plan on doing my shadow work every single night, just to hopefully speed up the healing process. But basically, and then I think you should do shadow work when you have a lot of time, like when you have a lot of free time, because you might be crying and feeling really depressed for a few hours, or maybe even a few days after you do this shadow work. So you want to probably do this when you want to probably do shadow work when you have a day off from work, you know, or better yet, when you have a few days off from work, like if you do not work on the weekends, then I think you should probably do your shadow work on the weekend, because this can be really time consuming and exhausting, and I think you should do shadow work right before you go to bed at night. Like when you're starting to feel sleepy and you're about to go to bed for the night, I think that is the best time to do shadow work for the first time, because then you can just fall asleep right after you do your shadow work, so you don't end up having to be awake all day and feel drained and exhausted and depressed, because you're going to feel really depressed when you do this. But I personally, like I said, I personally felt a lot less depressed, ironically, after doing my shadow work. Like literally the next morning, I felt a lot better. And I was surprised, because I thought I'd be depressed, since I was really depressed when I went to sleep. But I woke up feeling like, strangely, pretty happy. And I was like, wow, I guess it worked. So that's why I'm telling you about this now. So basically, I mean, like I said, you can do shadow work whenever something happens that triggers you. You know, whenever you feel really anxious all of a sudden or depressed about something, that would be a trigger. And I think that would be a good time to do some shadow work. But like I said, if you do shadow work every time you have a trigger, I think it will probably cause you to have a nervous breakdown. And I think it will probably cause you to have a nervous breakdown, and I think you'll probably be crying a lot in public. So I personally recommend that you just do shadow work at least once a week, right before you go to bed on your day off, when you do not have to go to work the next day, so that you can just go to sleep right after you do your shadow work, because you did your shadow work right before you went to sleep. And then, you know, you don't have to go to work the next day, so you can just wake up and just spend the day in bed, you know, doing self-care stuff, doing whatever you do for self-care. So Okay, this is step one of how to do shadow work according to this particular technique from Teal Swan. So step one is you just be with your emotions. So you just want to sit there without the TV on, with no music playing. You just want to sit in your thoughts for a while. And that is really difficult when you have depression like me. You do everything you can think of to distract yourself. You don't want to sit in your thoughts. But that's what you have to do. You just have to, step one is to do shadow work, is just to sit in your thoughts and feel all of your emotions fully. Don't try to distract yourself from, any emotional pain you feel. Just really feel it. Like, just cry it out. Just think about, and then you also want to basically think about, I personally thought about every single bad thing that ever happened to me in my life that really affected me. I literally laid on my bed and I thought about how I was molested as a kid. I thought about my relationships with people. I thought about every mean thing everyone has ever said to me that really hurt me. I thought about everything I could think of. I thought about my job. I thought about everything that really triggers me that I usually try not to think about. I thought about all of it because I wanted to heal as much things as I could think of. So I just thought about everything. And then after you think about all of your triggers, you just want to say to yourself and say to your emotions out loud, you want to say, I am completely here with you now. So you want to say that out loud so that it's like you're giving your emotions that you usually try to run away from attention finally. And like I said, this is really important to do this shadow work because it's going to make you feel happier in the long run of your life. It's going to make you feel better even though you're going to have a very painful few hours of crying and basically not liking what you're thinking about. It's going to be very depressing for a few hours, but in the long run, I think it will make you feel better. So after you sit with your emotions and say out loud, I am completely here with you now, then you're going to ask yourself 3 questions. The first question you ask is, how do I feel? Then you're going to name out loud all of the feelings and all of the emotions that you feel. And you're just going to sit there and feel everything for a few minutes. You're just going to cry it out about everything that bothers you. This is very cathartic. You're just going to cry it all out for a few minutes. I don't really know how long you should cry it out for and do this first part of shadow work for. I think I think it's up to you. I think just feel your emotions for as long as you feel like you need to. Then you're going to ask yourself the second question, which is, when did I last experience this exact same feeling? And then you're just going to have the answer pop up in your mind immediately, most likely. So you just want to think about the answer you get. And the answer you get could be a memory of something someone did or said to you, or it could be something that happened to you, or you might not even remember anything specifically. And if you don't remember anything specifically, then Teal says that's because it's an emotion that probably happened, something that probably happened to you before you were 8 years old. So you're probably not going to really remember it like as a specific memory. You're probably just going to feel the emotion of it. So just feel, if you don't remember anything specifically, then just feel the emotion of it, and just know that just by asking these questions and feeling the emotions, you were actually putting back together all of those split parts of your consciousness that happened from that trauma back when you were a child, and from all of the trauma you've ever experienced. Just by remembering and putting a label or an answer to where the origin of the trauma was, you were actually starting to heal the trauma, so that you hopefully in the future will have a lot less triggers, or the triggers you do have will hopefully be very much diminished in the future, hopefully, just from doing this. And so I personally, when I did this, I just kept asking, when did I last experience this exact same feeling, over and over and over and over again. And I found that there were so many things that happened to me that reminded me of the feelings I was feeling. So I kept asking, when did I last experience this exact same feeling, over and over again, and just remembering everything I could think of until I couldn't remember anything else. And then when I couldn't remember anything else, I would get an emotion, so I would just feel the emotion, and I knew that I was healing something that happened to me when I was a kid, probably, just by feeling the emotion. So once I had asked that question over and over again, and I felt like I couldn't think of anything else, and I felt like I had felt everything fully, when I felt like there was kind of a completion, like you'll feel kind of like a completion, like I can't tell you exactly how you know when you'll be done doing this particular session of shadow work. For each session that you do shadow work, it's kind of like you just have to feel like you felt everything, and like you haven't really rushed through the process, like you just have to kind of feel like you've actually done it. I think you'll just feel like kind of like a completion, like, okay, I feel like I've done it, And then you're going to ask yourself the final and third question, which is, when did I first experience this same feeling in my life? And when you ask yourself that question, you're going to probably get the answer immediately, but it might be a memory, but this question is specifically designed, I think, to make you remember a lot of the trauma that happened to you when you were a kid. So you might not remember anything specifically. It's very likely that you'll probably just feel some emotions popping up, and you won't really remember anything specifically, most likely. You'll probably just feel whatever you were feeling when you were a kid, whenever something happened to you that was traumatic when you were a kid that you just don't really have any memory of, but you still remember the feelings. The feelings will always stay with you until you do this shadow work, and then you bring it to the surface, And then once you've done this shadow work, it's like, once the feeling is brought to the surface, now you can finally heal and move on from it. And you'll be a happier person in the long run from doing shadow work. So this might seem like it's not necessary, but I realized, I had this epiphany recently, that it really is necessary to do this shadow work stuff. Just to heal. It really is necessary to do. And with the third question of when did I first experience this same feeling in my life, I also asked that question out loud to myself over and over again. I asked all of these questions to myself out loud. I did this whole process out loud by myself in my room. I thought it would be more effective if I said everything out loud. So I think you should say all of these questions out and things out loud as well. And I asked myself, when did I first experience this same feeling in my life over and over again? I asked all of these questions over and over again until I couldn't think of any more memories, until I couldn't remember anything else, and until I couldn't really feel anything else. I basically just cried everything out and remembered everything I could think of and felt everything I could possibly feel for a few hours until I felt better. I think once you start to feel better, that's the sign that you have completed the session of shadow work. You know, if you still feel a lot of pain and then you try to stop doing the shadow work, I feel like that means you probably have some more stuff that you need to uncover and think about. I don't think it'll hurt you to stop doing the shadow work when you still feel pain, because I was still feeling depressed when I stopped doing the shadow work, but I felt like I had completed the session of the shadow work. Like I said, I feel like you'll probably have a feeling of completion for the session of the shadow work. I felt like I thought of everything I could think of, and I felt a lot better after crying about everything. So I felt like I had completed the session of shadow work. And then right after I did my shadow work, I went to sleep. And that's why I recommend that you do shadow work. I recommend that you always do shadow work right before you go to sleep, because then you won't be up all night feeling depressed. Or, you know, if you try to do shadow work in the morning, you'll probably be depressed all day because you're not tired yet. So I think it's better to do shadow work when you're tired and you're about to go to sleep anyway. And then, you know, you'll just fall asleep, so you don't have to keep thinking about everything you just thought about. And then you will probably wake up feeling a lot better, like I did. I don't know. All I know is how I felt. I don't know how you will feel after doing shadow work, but Teal says that doing shadow work will help you be a happier person in the long run of your life. So I mean, I just know that I felt a lot better when I woke up the next morning. And like I said, I don't really know how often you need to do this, but I'm going to try to find out what other people suggest, or what Teal suggests for how often you should do shadow work. For now, I just recommend doing shadow work once a week, I think. I think if you do it more than once a week, I think if you do shadow work for more than once a week, you might become really depressed. I don't know. Then again, maybe you won't become depressed. Maybe it'll actually have the opposite effect, because if you're not running away from your pain anymore and you're facing it right when it happens, right when you're triggered, or, you know, at some point on a regular basis, like often, then maybe it will actually make the pain go away, because you are often putting back together all of those split parts of your consciousness and becoming more and more whole than most people who don't do shadow work are. So maybe it will actually make you happier. I really don't know. But that is how you do shadow work. This was a very long video, and I hope I didn't ramble too much. I probably should have structured like my talking points better, but I literally just kind of turned on the camera and I wanted to just be real with you guys and talk to you about this. I don't really like scripting anything except my sketches. Otherwise, I feel like I would be fake in a way if I tried to stick to talking points too much, but then again, it might make me more organized. It might make the video shorter. I don't know. What do you guys think? Should I try to be more organized and have like my talking points more together before I start filming? Or do you like hearing me just talk in however I would normally talk to a friend? Because I talk to you guys on camera like how I would talk to a friend, basically. I mean, I guess that's not even totally truthful, because if I really knew you in real life, I would be a lot less politically correct than I am on here. Like, there's a lot of things that I do feel like I could be more authentic on camera, but I don't want to influence anyone badly or, you know, spread misinformation or hurt anyone's feelings, or, you know, because not everyone's gonna understand my super dark sense of humor. But if, you know, people who know me in real life, like, I'm really politically incorrect, you know, I have a really dark sense of humor, like, I say a lot of things that are offensive, probably, but I don't want to say that stuff on camera because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So I feel like maybe I could be more authentic on here, but I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So I guess just know you're getting the real me, but you're getting the politically correct version of me. Because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Whereas if you know me in real life and we're already friends, then you're already used to my offensive sense of humor, you know? And I don't have to worry about hurting you. I always just want to be as nice of a person as I can be, you know? I really never say anything to anyone that I think is mean. So I never actually say anything mean. I say everything in as kind of a way as possible. And I only say things that I think are actually necessary to say. For the most part, when I'm talking to people online. Otherwise, I'll probably say something offensive. So, thank you for watching, and please subscribe if you like this video. I love you guys. Bye.